So we still have 10 minutes for questions and answers, please. Yes, or we can do questions and answers. Yeah, please.
You mentioned the problem of wealth versus other types of good being. You just touched upon it.
Yeah.
For about 30 years, we have these trials to replace GDP by something.
Yeah.
By anything.
Yeah.
Do you think this is an important track? Do you see some positive signs on that? Or I think a lot of these problems come from our fixation on GDP.
I will repeat the question if you want. The question was, isn't there a better measure? Shouldn't we come up with a better measure than stupid GDP? Everybody agrees that it's stupid, but everybody believes in it. This is sort of, Solus was a Greek philosopher, pre-Socratic Greek philosopher. He defined myth as the following. Myth is something that never happened, but it's happening always. And when you actually think about it, the whole idea of invisible hand of the market, never happened, but it's happening always. The whole model of Homo economicus, did you ever meet one? No, but everybody's one. Sort of. So these sort of myths we have, and one of those myths is GDP. And myth can only be replaced by other myths. Myths do not break down because of argumentation. So let's imagine, I don't know, the old sort of had a myth that the sun is carried by this chariot of horses. Of course they knew it's stupid, but they didn't have any better explanation, so we got to stick with it until somebody invents gravity or something. And this is the situation that we have today. Everybody knows that the system, as it is unsustainable. From whatever point of view you look at it, it is clear from each one of those, and maybe even more, it's unsustainable. We all know it has paradoxes, yet we have nothing better, so we got to stick with it. In this, I'm a reformed capitalist. I come from Czech Republic, and we had these reformed communists versus revolutionists. The reformed communists believe that communism can be cured, whereas the reformists believe that it must be abolished. The reformists were right. I mean, the revolutionaries were right. In this case, I would say that I still believe that capitalism should be reformed. We shouldn't really come up with a whole different, completely different system, but it must be reformed. Okay, yes, of course. Happiness index. I'm known in my country, and I pick bones with very many scientists, especially economics, because I'm very critical towards this whole ideology of numbers. And my first point would be, well, why do you need to have a number? Okay, how happy are you today? Okay, let me give you a nice little thing, okay? We all believe in GDP, right? And so we know that the economy is growing, 3.2% annually. How about your own personal income? Does anyone of you have a clue if your income has gone up vis-a-vis last year? And here comes the trick. By a percentage point that goes back to the decimal point. So why? I don't have a clue. But then again, this is exactly what I should care. I shouldn't care about some abstract GDP because it's very irrelevant to me. What's relevant for me is how much personal GDP of mine increases. And I don't have my statistics. Okay, this year I had 3.2% high. Oh, I forgot about inflation. So it's 2.4 actually. Does anyone of you do this? And it's an easy number. You can just look into your tax return, providing that the tax return actually reflects the level of your income. But it's not a difficult exercise. You could probably have it done in 20 minutes. Call your accountant and tell her or him, by how much did my personal GDP increase? And then we don't care. We don't care at all. We want to have more and more and more, of course, but we don't hold the number as holy, is my point. And there's something magical happens, and on the sphere of macro, it becomes extremely important. Though it is attached, or maybe exactly because it's disattached. And now let me take this exercise one step further. Are you happier this year than you were last year? By how much? 10.5%. Is that the same like yours?
Mine is 11.7.
Okay, mine is 3,948.
Bad luck.
More. My luck today, this year, is 3,845 more times more than last year. The problem is you don't know if you're 10% happier or if you are 3 times happier than last year. It's sort of very difficult to measure, but possible. And I think there are 2 ways, just to conclude the question so that we can get to another one. I think this is the fundamental problem of economics. Yes. Do it like this. Show you when it's ready. The fundamental problem, and you are addressing this very right. We have values in our lives. Some values have a price. This face, this microphone, water, I don't know, many good things have a price. There's nothing wrong with it. Some do not have a price. Suffering of animals, clean air, friendship, smiles, love, whatever. Beauty of our cities. These are topics that do not lend themselves easily to prices, and yet they're very important to us. There is no mathematics, even if you take quantum strength theory math, no mathematics that you can apply that can get you to a good result. Every result will be limping on one leg, because you cannot calculate with something with which you cannot calculate. And there are 2 trends in economy recently. Actually, 1 trend. And the trend is going this way. Let's give values that naturally do not lend themselves to price, such as clean air. Let's give them the proxies, such as carbon emissions. CO2, or here. So now we are trying to give a price to something that naturally does not lend to having one. Which of course causes problems because it's an artificial price, but then again all prices are artificial, we just got used to it. They were artificial 200 years ago, and now it looks like, yes, of course, tree costs or beer costs more than milk. But who told you? This is the second question that God asks human beings. Who told you? But there will always be an era of our lives, which is very important, that must be counted with, albeit not mathematically. So my suggestion here is more humble. My suggestion here is, let's do GDP minus deficit. In other words, if in 1 year I prick up the GDP by 3%, old GDP would look like this. In the new calculations, the growth level will in fact be 0. Because in double accounting, of course, you see immediately it's a loan, we have to weigh it out, but GDP does not use double accounting, it uses simple accounting, and there you take a loan, in simple accounting it looks like it fell from the sky, which it didn't. Yep. And this would be still a hard number, and yet politicians would be less inclined to cheat.
Moment, man kann auf Deutsch fragen und David wird es übersetzen für die Leute, die nahe bei mir sind, kriegen das Mikrofon, Leute, die weit weg sind, müssen aufstehen und wirklich laut reden. Das ist zu weit weg, bitte laut.
In your book, you write a lot about we need to find we need to reduce our needs. We have to find our police point where we find when do we have enough. But you don't answer in your book, how do we find where it's enough?
Yeah.
For example, today we heard we are going to eat a very more eco-efficient dinner, but we are still eating a 3-course dinner.
3 or 3? Because this would defy the law of economics that there's no such thing as free lunch, but nobody ever said anything about free dinners. That's a very good point, no? No, my point in the book is a little more, I think, a little more sophisticated. My point is we don't know when we are in the bliss point. In fact, if I talk to you for 10 minutes, I could make you feel that you actually are on it right now.
Okay.
Right now, maybe this is your bliss point. Are you hungry? No. Well, maybe a little bit. Are you cold? Are you scared for life? Are you suffering? Are you in a war situation? Do you have an iPad? Everything's cool. You are at your bliss point. My point here is that we don't know. And again, if I talk to you for 5 minutes using a little bit different rhetorics, I could make you feel like consumer zero. This is the very trick of advertisements, by the way. When you see an advertisement for a nice little face cream, it is not an advertisement for a beautiful face. It's actually telling you that you're ugly without the cream. Or these yogurt, I love the yogurt, the happy family archetypes in families. You know, it's Monday morning, but the sun is shining, and the husband wakes up, and he wakes up and his teeth are clean, and he has this six-pack on his stomach, and he hugs the wife, and the kids are looking forward to go to school, and everybody's laughing, and it's because of Yoga Bell. And if you are unable to create this wonderful Monday morning atmosphere, then you are an insufficient housewife or houseman or whatever. So this was my point. My point was that there's a basic discrepancy. This is what the old discovered already. This is the Greek. There were two schools in Greek. One was the school of Hedonists, and the other one was the school of Stoics. And they said, well, there's a basic discrepancy between demand and supply. In other words, in every human being, this would even be the engine of growth. Discontent. I want more. This is the engine of growth. There's nothing wrong with it, but then you mustn't complain that you're not content. If it's discontent that we are driving, then there's two ways how to run. Either you run from point A to point B, so you have to get your train, for example, or you run in circles, which is called jogging. And both of it is fine. Only these people shouldn't complain that they're not getting anywhere. Oh, again, I ended up in the same spot where I started. Bummer. So anyway, so let's go back. There's a discrepancy between I demand this much and I only have this much. Now, what to do? This is a problem. So the school of hedonism, or the hedonist school, the Epicureans said, well, okay, work harder so that you increase your wealth all the way till you have everything that you want to have. This school we have been following for thousands of years. This is why our GDP has grown so much, because we spend 40 hours a day working on it. But the problem here is, and this is well documented even in empirical literature, that demand runs away. Let me tell you the economic interpretation of the story of Genesis. Because, Adam and Eve didn't eat the apple, the fruit, because they were hungry. They didn't need it. They were already in the garden, everything was nice and beautiful. And yet they did, because of a little advertisement that the devil pulled. Look, it's a very nice thing, and you gain knowledge. Anyway, then God got them out of the garden, and in a way, the curse that Eve got was a curse of demand. You will demand, but your demands will not be with you. They will be disjointed, they will be with somebody else. There will be somebody else's desires, they will not be your own, and they will drive you forever. And Adam got the curse of supply. You will work in the sweat of your brow, and it will not be enough to satisfy all the demands that symbolically Eve has. This I think you can still relate to. So, and the other school, so you can see this, what you're describing is one of the oldest archetypes in the known literature, or in all myths. You can go down, the Greek myths, you can even go down to Babylonian myths. There's always a trade-off between knowledge, progress, and harmony. You can't have both. The school of Stoics said, well, if there's a discrepancy between demand and supply, then decrease your demand. Because demand, this is what Frank Knight who is a Chicago-based economist, or was, said very nicely, demand, it is not the satisfaction of demands that we want, but newer and better demands. Demand doesn't want to be saturated, it wants to be replicated in some sort of new children. So this is what I meant, that it really is up to our choice what we choose. But if we choose to be content with what we have, then growth will not be as strong as it has been. This is a trade-off. Can't have a free dinner.
My question would be, if we go into a direction of sufficiency, that may mean that, like, we would have one automobile every 10 years instead of having one every 5 years.
Yeah.
So when we do the cap, that if I say this to an automobile producer, he will say, "Oh, this is a real crisis because I can only make half the cars in the same time period." So that will create an economic problem. But on the other hand, people would only need to buy one car instead of two cars in the same period.
Yeah.
So this income, which seems to be reduced, would not be needed. And
Very good point.
This is a thinking exercise for economists to think how we can work in that way.
Yeah, great point. This is what I call Cinderella economy. Cinderella got ridiculously artificial work to do every evening. Her evil mother-in-law mixed peas with something else, with Lent, I think, just to keep her busy. And I was just thinking about this, with a stupid little example with puzzles. We have puzzles. There's half of society that actually sews them apart. They paint or whatever, they make them and then sew them apart. They put them in a little box. You buy them, and then you get to put them together. And if it'd be a little more difficult, you could then have it. Okay, it's done. Hand it over. Pay somebody who dismantles them again, and you could resell them. So, of course, I'm making a little bit fun of this, but what I mean is we need some sort of generator of desires. If not for cars, let's imagine that we don't go down on the consumption of cars. It has to come up somewhere else, movies or perfumes or something, so that this engine keeps on turning. You will note, of course, that most of the economy today is not, it's services. It's sort of, how should I say? It's not servicing people, but it's servicing the very link of specialization. Because specialization with it carries an extreme demand for coordination. This is why we have so much of business, with bureaucracy and institutions, because everybody, I can do only 1.0000% of my needs. But I cannot do this, I cannot make a microphone, I cannot make a fix, I can't even make a taper, I can't even, for crying out loud, I can't even brew beer. Which, it's very difficult for me to live with that. But I can't do it. I have to rely on somebody else to do that for me. And hope that I will trade my ridiculous, what am I doing here? I'm telling you stories. This is what I say to my son. What do you do, Daddy? He's like, oh, it's very difficult. So I tell him that I'm telling stories for adults. And, and people are actually happy to feed me, fly me over, and give me things like beer and shirts. And, yeah, but to take it quite frankly, yes, this is the problem. This is the problem. And okay. This is exactly, and let's turn it back to, I don't have a good answer to this completely, but maybe a little hint there. This is something that Keynes described, the saving thrift, it was called. People start saving, blah, blah, blah. Our levels of growth, and this reflects in everything, were artificially high. This also means that our level of employment has been artificially high. This also means that our level of consumption has been artificially high. And there is no way we can bring that up again. So the only solution of that is to sort of think of a more stationary economy. So let's imagine you're sailing in a ship and the winds are blowing. The winds of change, the winds of innovation are blowing. And then one day they stop blowing, which is what happened. I mean, it's just not blowing. So, what to do? Should you be standing there, waiting for the wind to come? Or perhaps say, okay, we switch to a stationary state, so let's clean the engines, let's do the maintenance. But maybe if we really we need to change the economy, and instead of sailing, we start growing. This is something that has to be patterned. This is what we have to think about. Okay, growth is good, but what if it doesn't happen? Then we need to find a way that we don't crush each other's skulls like we always have done in the history. A little bit of growth disappears, and we cease to be human beings, we cease to be Europeans, and we do the good old bone crashing over, of anybody who speaks a little different dialect. So it could be possible, yes, of course. And this is actually an argument that Bernard Mandeville made. A society without thieves would be a poor society, because in a society without thieves, the blacksmith would not have enough work because nobody would need bars in the window. This is sort of similar. So you need to ask yourself, where are we spending our energy? If we are building cars, is that the best way how to spend energy? If obviously we don't need, let's suppose that what you said is sort of general truth. If we only need a car once in 5 years, once in 10 years, then why should I get a car once in 5 years? Just to consume? Because this is what's the underlying point. Because by consumption has a double holy role. Not only are you helping yourself to a nicer car with even cooler air conditioning, but you are helping the whole society. And maybe I should end with this. This is the irony of it. Just imagine that it's turned around again. And right here there was this painting of this manic state of the economy. Everybody seems to agree that the problem there was overconsumption that was debt-induced. What's the solution? Even more consumption that's debt-induced. Everybody seems to agree the problem was too low interest rates, especially with Fed. What's the solution? Even lower interest rates. Everybody seems to agree that the rating agencies were too lenient in their ratings. What's the solution? Be even more lenient and by no means don't downgrade us. So what happens here, this is in psychoanalysis, one more minute do we have? Yeah? This is called subject-object reversal. Something that you think you control, controls you. Golem of Prague, Aladdin's lamp, even the Matrix movie. We created machines to serve us. At the end of the day, we are actually serving the machines. The Lord of the Rings, the ring was created to serve Mordor, it doesn't, and then when you destroy the ring, you destroy all Mordor. This is called object petit a. In Kundera's literature, you see it very often. Man starts a game, usually of sexual nature, in Kundera's Unbearable Lightness of Being, or pretty much all his stories are following the same pattern. Man starts a game, usually sexual, because he thinks he can handle it. Blah, blah, blah. At the end of the plot, the game gets a life of its own, and it plays him. The puppeteer becomes a puppet. This is exactly what happened with debt. We thought we could play it, we thought we could control it. Now we have become the slaves of debt. Debt is dictating to Germans what to do, it's dictating to you what you should do, it's dictating to me, it's dictating to Greece. So there's 12 people that are called rating agencies. My religion is that you should increase your taxes, dear France, because you need to pay back your debts. If you don't decrease your taxes, we will downgrade you and you'll go bankrupt. Another scenario, my religion is that you should decrease taxes, because by decreasing taxes you get the economy growing, blah, blah, blah. If you don't decrease your taxes, you will be downgraded. It's an absolute religion. The only things that we economists agree on is tautology. I'll give you an example. One, the biggest wisdom of economists is that people react to incentives. If you put an incentive into any sentence, you will immediately sound like an economist. But if you actually look up the meaning of the word incentive in any conventional dictionary, you will find out that it actually means things that people react to. So the wisdom of economists is that people react to whatever they react to, and they don't react to things that they don't react to. Thank you very much.